Hey y'all, Kevin Hutchison here with Realty Austin, and I am grateful to be a part of Stories Inside the Man Cave, a homegrown podcast just like my own business.
Wake your ass up
or take a damn nap.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
It's time.
Sean, you were twerking. That's going to happen.
Murph, don't be a dick all your life.
It's one of the more fun podcasts I've ever done.
Hey, I tell you what, if you're not talking about sports in the man cave, I better not say you not a fan.
That's it.
Happy to say we're joined by definitely Five Tools' favorite MLB player for sure. Houston Astros third baseman, Alex Bregman.
Big time right here. Dustin McComas. I was thinking of having a surprise for you today. That's why I changed the background without the Stories Inside the Man Cave logo. Mike Harge was going to join us because you two are perhaps two of the most baseball knowledgeable people in my life. And I apologize. He has youth sports activities today, which is a good reason.
Yeah, that's the best reason, and I'll be in his shoes probably in a couple years when my little man is hopefully smacking some balls off the tee and chasing down some grounders at the field nearby.
I've watched from afar you and your lovely wife and your son. It has been a transition. And tell me what it's like before we dive into your journey, Dustin. What it's like, how your life has changed, not only marrying your best friend, but also in addition to this ever-growing McComas family.
It's changed a lot. It's certainly changed for the better. I always would kind of ask people, I was an only child and only grandchild on one side. So I kind of had a smaller family, and, you just hear people talk about just the connection you have with a child, once you have one, and it's just kind of unexplainable. And I just always would kind of wonder what that would felt like, how would I feel or whatever. And it's true. It just kind of happens inside of you. And it's like, you get this kind of different perspective and this different connection to a human being, to a loved one. And understanding that, you're such a big part of, in this case, his journey, into the world, and just kind of, it's really just indescribable feeling. And it's been awesome. It's been unique because Jack was born like right at the beginning of the pandemic. He was born on April 2nd, 2020. So, we're talking very, very beginning of that thing. So it was really just me, his mom, and that was it. No help or anything like that, because you didn't know back then. There wasn't any testing. You didn't know how long things last. You didn't know how serious it was. So while the sports world shut down, it was kind of a blessing for me because, we could be there all the time for him. On the flip side, we didn't ever really get to experience hey, let's go load him up in a carrier and go down to Enchiladas y Moss and hang out for an hour and he just sleeps beside us type thing. Like, we didn't really get that. So we've got a second one on the way in June, and we're hoping to kind of have a little bit more of that experience with her when she arrives. But yeah, it's been awesome. You certainly have to learn how to manage your time differently, but it's just an indescribable feeling. You just get this connection inside of you, and you just have these feelings that kind of take over. And you just figure out how to get stuff done. A lot more coffee, maybe, but you just figure out how to get stuff done. Yeah, cheers to that. And it's just every little day you see these little facial expressions or words, and they grow so much in a week that it's just every day is kind of a new adventure. So we've been really fortunate. It's been an awesome journey so far.
And it's been fun following him along with, with your career and your career change, which we're about to discuss. It's just been I know the pandemic has been so tough. I can't imagine what that's like as a parent, but like you said, it's on the fly. There's no manual, and you guys have really provided a good life for him. And you can see Dustin and his current family minus the one on the way. Obviously, there's no
Right.
photos of that one. Go to the Twitter handle at Stories Man Cave, and you will see the McComas family. All smiles, a little baseball, a little bit of everything, but it's been fun. So to give the fine American folks an idea of who you are, I met Dustin back in my TV media days. You were at orangebloods.com. One of my favorite baseball writers, seriously, of all time. You did an amazing job. And you were so connected because Dustin's from the Houston area.
Correct.
Played baseball at a pretty high level, and for whatever reasons didn't quite work out at college. But you were so connected. And so from there, after college, at UT, you're a UT alum, you became a scout along the way, correct?
Yeah. So, I knew when baseball stopped for me, I wanted to still try to stay in the game somehow. And I thought coaching was going to be the route that I took, because what's the closest thing to playing? It's coaching. You're on the field, you're competing, you're putting a uniform on, all that sort of thing. So I went to Louisiana Tech my first year to play, and I got there in the fall, and I was having a pretty good fall, but man, I just was burned out. I didn't have a great high school experience. Everybody kind of says this, but like you get this perspective every year, and it's like, man, if I would have known this back then, like things could have just been different, to have that different perspective and stuff like that. But, I had 4 new head coaches in 4 years in high school, and played in a really, really competitive area. And I just didn't have a great experience my last couple of years. I kind of got burned out, and I was like, man, you go to college, it's a job. I mean, people say that the work you got to put in and stuff and the sacrifices, it's all real. So I realized too, like, hey, I'm 5'10". I don't throw 90 miles an hour. I don't hit homers. Professional aspirations for me as a baseball player are very, very slim. There's only so many Dustin Pedroias of the world, and that guy had elite makeup and all that other sort of stuff. So after my first year at Louisiana Tech, I transferred to Texas and just did the whole student thing with kinesiology major, because I was just chasing that coaching thing. And, it's funny because my mom would always tell me, hey, you're a pretty good writer, because I would always get the high, like the writing scores on whatever standardized test it was and that sort of thing. And I liked writing about baseball in high school. Actually, my senior year, that one of these big stories I wrote was how I wanted to be Theo Epstein, a future general manager, and all this stuff. So I always I enjoyed writing, and I just never really considered that being a possible thing. But I was an Orange Bloods member. One of my best friends, Kevin Hickson, at the University of Texas, kind of introduced me to it, because I played in high school with Michael Goodson at Klein Collins. Oh, yeah. And it was a really, popular thing at the time. And he was like, man, you got to join this website. They're talking about Michael Goodson. And I was like, oh, I know that guy. I know what schools he's leaning to and that sort of thing. And I just got hooked to Orange Bloods. I was like, whoa, this message board, it's super addicting. And at the Longhorns had it rolling right then. And I was just such a sports fanatic. And I was like, this is great. So I think a few months later, they offered an internship to students that were members. And I applied, not thinking I was going to get it. But I was like, you know what? They need help covering baseball. I love baseball. At the time, Kyle Russell played at Texas, who I grew up playing with. I was like, man, I could write about Kyle Russell and this and that. I ended up getting it. Me and another guy, Nick Olivier, who I believe is in journalism in another place. And I just stuck with it. And I just kind of did my own thing, because I viewed the game through kind of a scouting component, because I wasn't a classically trained journalist. I wasn't a journalism major. I wasn't somebody growing up in the newspaper industry or anything like that. I was very self-taught when it come to writing. And I was like, one of the ways I like viewing the game is, with pitchers and hitters and swings and what pitches look like and why they're getting swings and misses and what their mechanics are doing, all this sort of stuff. So I just started writing that stuff in addition to the kind of general, hey, here's your gamer type thing. And people ate it up. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was just kind of a unique way to cover Texas baseball. And I was like, wow, people are really enjoying this content. So I ended up just saying yes to everything. Jeff Ketchum and Chad Hastings needed a producer for the drive back at FM 104.9 The Horn back in the day. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. And then, Chip and Sean needed a producer. And I was like, I'll pitch in and do that. So I was producing a lot of sports radio and also writing as well. working a lot of hours, but it was like, I love sports. This is what I want to be doing. I think I can carve a career out of this. And eventually, started doing Texas baseball all the time. That led to doing Texas basketball and columns and so on and so forth. So it was a unique journey. I just knew that I wanted to stay in the game. And along the way, I was fortunate enough to befriend some scouts and things like that, because these guys were seeing some of the things I was tweeting and writing. And I'd be down in the scout section at times with a radar gun, trying to get that sort of look and things like that. And I actually had the opportunity to be an associate scout for the Pirates for a couple years. They actually invited me to their scout school in 2013, which was a phenomenal experience. One of the best experiences I've ever had professionally. And then I was a part of the Dodgers amateur associate program or something like that, basically an associate scout for them for a couple of years as well. So I was fortunate in that I can kind of tag along at times, or at least have some scouts I could talk to, because I'm a guy that's a big believer in you learn by asking questions. You can't approach any of this thinking that you've got it all figured out, especially baseball. I mean, guys, we had Max Muncy on our 5-Tool podcast. He's like, Albert Pujols showed up to the Dodgers and was like asking questions and trying to learn. And that's Albert Pujols, one of the best right-handed hitters ever. So I was fortunate to kind of have that scouting background, which is I'm very, very passionate about. I had some interviews with some pro teams, got close to cracking through there, but now I feel like I'm doing that. I'm just not with a team type of thing, which less stressful. My name isn't attached to any draft picks or anything like that, but I knew I wanted to stay in the game somehow, and I've been super lucky to turn that into a career that I really enjoy.
Well, one thing I have to admit, I was impressed immediately, because it is there's some good writers out there and people who can write well, but baseball to me you really have to paint the picture to really help people understand all the nuances and how intricate this game really is, because and I think we can both relate, baseball is an art. It is a most beautiful thing when you include the diamond. You can be successful in this game if you do something right 30% of the time.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the most bizarre. So for you to write that as a scribe or whatnot, I've always admired your work, and now you have parlayed that into something that is so much. It's a step up in your career, and it's called 5-Tool, and you are teamed up with Drew Bishop, who was, I believe, the former director of baseball operations at UT. Correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and it's funny that he and I met a long time ago. He was one of the best prep players in the nation. Coming through, standout player at Rockwall, went to the University of Texas to play. And we actually played against each other when we were 12 or 13.
Wow.
An event in Dallas. And he, like, at that age, you're playing sometimes from mounds that are 46 feet away. So if you're throwing really hard, that's the equivalent of like 102, 103 miles an hour if you're kind of, spreading out for 60 feet, 6 inches. And he was throwing so hard. He was so good. And I'm sitting there. I think I was due up second or third that inning. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, just don't get hit. We were playing this summer. We had already qualified for this big event in Orlando at Disney World to go play in an AU national championship. And I was like, just don't hit me. Sure enough, he hits me. I've still, my one pointer finger still looks a little bit different. I don't know if you can really see it on screen, but it's got a bump. And like, I thought like I was dead, I was convinced I was dying. And the reality is I just got hit on the finger, and it cut it. And the worst part was, so they come out and they get the numbing spray, like you see in soccer a lot when the guys have an injury, and because they wanted to like numb my hand. Well, they didn't realize there was a big cut from where the seams like cut my finger. So they spray the numbing spray, and it stings so much that I start screaming. So I'm like crying because of the numbing spray. And I was like, just look like an idiot. And bless his heart, Drew came over and he was consoling me in the dugout. Hey man, I'm sorry about that. So on and so forth. And like, that's just how we met. And then we reconnected when he was at Texas, a student the same time I was. Playing at Texas, and then the director of baseball operations. So it's kind of funny that now we're at 5-Tool together. And he and I both have a big passion for helping kids kind of get that opportunity to keep playing. I mean, that's, if I could simplify 5-tool, that's what 5-tool is. Try to get a player to stay in the game 1 year longer, whether that's JUCO, D3, D2, major D1, pro ball, whatever it is. Just try to give that player an opportunity to stay in the game because the game's been so good to us. I think that you can carve out totally unique careers, coaching, scouting, playing, opening up hitting facilities, pitching labs, whatever it is. I mean, there's just so many ways to contribute to the game that's, we're just very, very passionate about that. So it's just kind of funny how, the timing worked out. He was the ops guy at Texas forever. I was at Orange Bloods forever. I think we were both ready for a new challenge in the game, and we're enjoying it so far. We've got the podcast going, but really, I mean, we're totally at home out at fields, watching guys, evaluating guys, writing them up, and hopefully a player gets an extra opportunity from that scenario.
Yeah, Drew Bishop, I always enjoyed working with him. He was always so good to us in the media and knowledgeable, helpful. And I do remember when he was on, played for Augie. Yeah. But just real quick, I forget. I get so when it comes to baseball, I'm like a little 8-year-old. I forget like the major things. That this is episode 113, that is sponsored by Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency, an Austin OG, Westlake OG, a Longhorn legacy. So he knows Austin probably better than most people who live here because he's been here forever. He's a unicorn. So you mentioned the podcast, and I want to give everyone a look at this. And I've actually listened to 5 or 6 of these. And this is you and Drew, the 5-Tool podcast. You mentioned something that I think that there's so much information thrown at parents and players because recruiting for baseball, am I off base by saying that really starts your freshman year in high school?
Yeah, it starts super early. And, if you talk to a lot of college coaches, they don't want it to start that early. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. It's just so different from basketball and football recruiting. And a big reason why, and it's one of the reasons why we basically did this series of like recruiting podcasts that we hope players and parents would listen to try to help explain and educate them about the process, because it's just totally unique. And I think it's very different because if you think about how much time these coaches have to evaluate players in person, it's really different from football and basketball. When the high school baseball season is going, the college baseball season is going. When the summer baseball season is going at the high school level, sometimes in the case of a program like Texas, you're playing into late June in Omaha. And so you basically just have July and part of August to go out and see all these guys. And, oh, by the way, you're trying to manage 11.7 scholarships and juggle that with who you think is going to go to the major league draft and who's going to transfer and this and that. And it's a different beast. And it starts so early. And I think I think that sometimes kind of clouds parents' perspective a lot of the time as they see these really young players committing, and they're like, why isn't that happening to my son? Or no, like, I'm a high school junior. I should be committed already. And the reality is a lot of those super early commitments are the top 1% of players. And you don't even know oftentimes, is that guy committing to a 75% scholarship, a 50, the minimum? Like, is he just, is it an academic deal and he's tweeting out a commitment? Like, you just don't know because like the idea of a full scholarship in baseball is just almost unheard of. So the whole early recruiting thing kind of ends up kind of warping the perspective of parents and players because they want to constantly compare themselves to people. You covered Shaka Smart some. He used to always talk about, what was it, like comparison is the thief of joy. Like, you start seeing all these players and parents and they're comparing, okay, that guy committed. Well, I need to be committed. And, there are guys that played at Texas at a really high level. Corey Knebel, who's in the big leagues. Bryce Elder, minor league pitcher of the year in the Brave system. Those guys committed and signed with Texas like at the end of their senior seasons. And those guys were phenomenal college players. So excellent. It's a really unique recruiting process. Coaches don't really have that much time to go out and see these guys in person. They're juggling the 11.7. So we really wanted to take the time, and especially with Drew. I mean, Drew is as educated on this topic as anybody I've ever met. Like, hey, like a certain point of time, these coaches can't even call you until like September 1st of your junior year. So if you're a sophomore in high school, you're like, why am I not getting recruited? Because these guys can't call you on the phone unless you reach out to them and call them because of the contact rules and things like that. Just a lot of those little things that I think if parents and players listen to, kind of like, okay, like deep breath, like your body is going to change so much from when you're 14 to 15, 15 to 16, 16, and on through your senior year. Like you're going to change a lot. Your skills are going to change a lot. You're going to develop a lot. Like you've got time. You have time, and keep in mind that these coaches are managing 11.7 scholarships in a really short amount of time to go out and see you as well.
Dustin, do you think in our lifetime, I mean, this has frustrated me for a long time, and I know I'm one of thousands. Will we ever see legislation passed in NCAA that affords or allows programs to increase the number of scholarships? Because 11.7 to me is archaic.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's archaic.
Yeah.
And and also too, if you consider how many players per coach college baseball has, it's by far, I think, the worst ratio. You can have all these guys in the fall. You might have over 40 guys on your roster, and you've got 3 paid coaches and a volunteer. Like that ratio, compare that to football and basketball and everything else, it's certainly really different. I do think that we will get to the point where, in talking to Kendall Rogers at D1 Baseball so much over the years, I think we'll get to a point of something like 13 or a little bit more than 13 or something like that.
Progress.
Yeah, it'd make a huge difference when you think of how many guys you can kind of spread that out across. I wonder how much NIL type stuff would help. I was really encouraged in talking to some of the recruiting coordinators that we talked to doing these recent podcasts that was starting to be something that was actually an active part of conversation. Yeah. So I'm hoping that will help. But, to me, college baseball is kind of, I don't even want to say like a TV deal, but even like a streaming deal or something in that financial world away from perhaps becoming more of a revenue sport. Being more of a revenue sport would lead to more scholarships and things like that. Although you got to balance the Title IX with the softballs and the soccers and the things like that. So I do think there'll be a point in time where they do increase it a little bit. Now, I will say, something that the average fan doesn't consider, and Drew always brings this up with me because he's had that unique perspective of being behind the scenes of the costing and the budgeting and things like that. You add that scholarship or those 2 scholarships, it's not just the scholarship, it's the food, it's the travel, it's the medical stuff. I mean, it adds up. So, and if you're kind of saying, okay, well, we're increasing 2 here. Well, at Title IX, we've got to increase 2 here, and here, and all that sort of thing. But I do think that we will get to the point where they'll bump it up a little bit. So we kind of get out of that 11.7 range. Unfortunately, at a place like Texas, they don't really have access to being able to stack the academic money with the athletic money. But at least at other programs around the nation, they are able to do that. So more of these kids are getting access to, not having to pay for much of their college experience because they're a standout baseball player. And
that's the thing. I think I've had some interesting conversations, and I know you and Drew are full aware of this. A lot of kids can go the junior college route and be on full rides. Mm-hmm. And there's not limitation of practice time either, right. I don't think. So it's very bizarre. Now, you mentioned Drew, and it's hard to talk about Drew, and even for you when you were a student, and not mention Augie Garrido, late Augie Garrido. He made our jobs so easy. Mm-hmm. He valued the relationships. I was the only good thing about Facebook, other than connecting us and everyone, are the memories it puts up. And I know you remember this. I think you asked this question, which spawned this remark from Augie. I think it's 5-6 years ago. He didn't comment on the recruit, but he was asked about then recruits Augie or Kyler Murray at the time. Here we go.
For the one you're talking about, I would get in my car, drive down and pick him up, and give him the car afterwards. Hypothetically.
that good of a ball player?
Oh,
Yeah. So was Manziel. So they're a lot alike except for the social part of it.
Coach, speaking of
Oh man, that's so great, man. That was perfect Augie right there. I mean, my favorite part about Augie was that he never tried to hide from his feelings and like what he was feeling and what he thought, and that was just a classic example of that for sure. The hypothetical Kyler Murray recruitment. So I think that's around the time that he was either visited in high school or he was transferring, or one of the two things. I think it was that time where he visited.
Yeah.
I remember I actually spent part of my day in my car driving around campus because we heard he was at Pluckers.
Yeah.
And I was trying to snap a photo of him because that's just how big of a deal it was back then. But oh yeah, that classic Augie, just not afraid to share exactly what he's thinking in the most honest and sincere way possible.
He is missed, and it was just. All too well when he spoke, it meant something. I felt like all those availabilities we had with him during the week, during the season, or even off season, you learned something.
Yes.
Either it was humor, or you walked away and it made you think constantly. And that leads me to this. I've heard this term for a long time. But not until Augie's death did I really understand the gravity of it. This is when the term "the baseball family." What does that mean to you?
Oh, it's tough to put into words because it's just a constant. It's just that relationship you have with the game. One of Augie's best qualities about the game is he really believed it could teach you life lessons.
Yeah.
And that how you can become a better person through your experiences with the game. But it's just kind of like once you get in there and you experience that, whether it's the coaching level, the playing level, even the media level, whatever it is, you just kind of form these unique connections with people because you share those same experiences about dealing or talking about the failure and the highs and the lows and the lessons that you take away from that. And it just becomes one big family to where you all just kind of have this unique way of relating to that game and to those people and to those experiences that you've shared. But, the baseball family just, it rallies around guys because there's just kind of that unique bond and that sort of thing. But it's a special thing. I mean, you'd see it all the time when they'd have the annual alumni game, which Texas is going to have pretty soon. And those guys would come back and be guys that are just from all walks of life, business world, professional baseball world, coaching world, whatever it is. And just kind of see that unique bond that they share because they kind of join that fraternity. It's just something that never leaves them, but it's just a really unique thing. Like, and I was at the Texas High School Baseball Coaches Association convention. And it's just like, you see all the guys kind of cross paths and, oh yeah, I remember when we did this and that. What are you up to now? And I've got these players coming up, and hey, we're doing this thing on the side, this new technology. It's just hard to describe. I mean, you just kind of have those unique connections to where like everybody's guard kind of falls down when you just start talking about the game and what you've learned and experienced from it.
Special group, really is, and it's I don't know what it was when we all lost Augie Garrido. It made sense then. Because the fraternities just crossed the fraternities under the baseball umbrella. Now, I don't know how to make a smooth segue to this, but this large sign right here, Dustin, is our latest sponsor. And it is Manscaped. That is exactly what we're going to have a conversation about. Manscaped.com. I don't know how to make a transition from the baseball family to that. Maybe this will help. And you and I will have a couple of laughs after this. This is what Manscaped.com. These are the products that you have access to. Yeah, we're covering about every topic imaginable here at Man Stories Inside the Man Cave, including manscaping. Manscaped.com is so popular that they have their own periodical, a newspaper. In their top headline, "We Save Balls," is pretty popular nowadays. And You know, they really attracted me, so much so that I love the products, and they sent me this entire package I'm going to show you. Well, the premier products of this box I just showed you, the Performance Package 4.0, this bad boy, the Lawnmower 4.0. Take a listen. That is the sound of absolutely tremendous manscaping in the man cave. So today, as you're watching this episode, I encourage you to jump on to manscaped.com and look for the Performance Package 4.0. You'll get the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. It is smooth, and you just feel like a piece of silk afterwards, and you feel clean. Personally, let me show you what I love the most. Right here, the ball deodorant. I know the light's a little bright here, but the ball deodorant, it smells like sweet mahogany and pheromones. I never thought I would have a conversation with you, Dustin, about that subject matter, ever.
I didn't either.
It's a first. So my favorite part of the first segment, because the second segment's really short, the Man Cave story, brought to you by Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency. There have been some classic ones. Is there one or a 1A or B throughout your playing days or your professional days as a journalist, or any moment that you witnessed that you were a part of, perhaps in a dugout in your profession?
Oh, that's a good question. I had an unfortunate experience when I was 12, playing in the AAU National Championship in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was sick before the game, and I was supposed to pitch that day. So me being, too competitive 12-year-old was like, I don't care. I'm playing. You're not taking the ball away. Like, I'm getting out there. I'm going to pitch. We've been looking forward to this event forever. So because I was sick, I just chugged a lot of Gatorade, water, whatever it was. And I get out there on the mound, and I think I threw an inning and whatever, and I'm pitching and I'm going and I'm playing. I hit early in the lineup. So I hit and ran down the bases, whatever. And so I'm warmed up. I get back out there for the next inning, and it hits me. All the water hits me. The Gatorade hits me. The sickness hits me.
No.
And I threw up on the mound. I threw up on the mound when I was 12 years old at the AAU National Championship. And we played in the same event when I was 13 in Oklahoma City. And one of the San Diego teams that was at the event the year prior, remembered me as the guy that threw up on the mound. So that was quite the 12-year-old experience for sure. I can laugh about it now, but you can just imagine a 12-year-old, you just want to go hide in a dark place and never come out again for a long, long time. So yeah, it's just funny to look back and laugh at now. I also too, when I was in T-ball when I was 5, I was fortunate that my dad coached a lot of my teams growing up. He's just always able to be super involved, and it took a lot of pride in it. And we played in a T-ball championship when I was 5, and we were playing this team that was undefeated. And, only grandchild, so my grandparents are there, my mom's there, my dad's there, and we just start kicking the crap out of this team. I mean, we're run ruling them. And the umpire, his son played on the other team. So he got mad we were winning, and he ejected my dad from the game, a T-ball game. He ejects him from the game. So my mom's got a little bit of a temper. So my mom starts getting after the umpire. He ejects her from the game. And then my grandparents get upset, and he ejects my grandparents from the game too. Wow. So I'm on the mound playing pitcher as a 5-year-old in T-ball, and I watched my entire family get ejected by an umpire at a T-ball championship game. One of my childhood friends, has the VHS still at his house. I need to get that thing converted online somehow. But And so like I start crying on the mound. So I'm like, what's happening to my family? What's going on here? And eventually they bring me out some water and we end up winning the championship. But it's that actually happened. T-ball can be a very serious thing, unfortunately.
No, it is. It is highly competitive. And but at least your parents, they had reason to be upset. You see some things now that surfaced that it's like that.
Oh, I could go on for days. These
Yeah.
I was at the 13-year-old that AAU event I was at. I saw a benches clearing brawl where parents were grabbing bats at a 13-year-old event.
What?
Yeah, it'll blow your mind some of the stuff you see at these amateur level events. But one thing we always tell people, the coaches at those games at the college level are paying attention to how those parents behave. And your parents can cost you a scholarship offer. I am full conviction when I say that.
I'm glad to hear that, Dustin, because some of the stuff on all sports, youth sports, is out of control.
Yeah.
And we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, and I want to be honest with you, I have to stop by the pit stop behind me. All this coffee we're talking about, you said all the Gatorade hits you. Well, all this coffee the past hour hit me. And on the other side of this break, I cannot wait to talk baseball with you about some of the teams and on all levels. Dustin is a wealth of knowledge for baseball. It's always fun to have a good conversation with him. So go get yourself a cup of coffee. I'm done with that, but we're going to take a quick break. And on the other side, it is straight up baseball with our guy, Dustin McComas. For all of your insurance needs, look no further than our primary sponsor, Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency. The ATX OG has been insuring Austin for over 3 decades. And get this, Jim Saxton is a Longhorn legacy. He is the son of the late, great James Saxton, who was a Heisman finalist. Be sure to give him a call, or better yet, visit his website, saxtoninsurance.com, and tell him that the stories inside the Man Cave Boys recommended you. Those breaks are never long enough, especially in the situation I was in. This has been, listen, Dustin has a great story, as he told us about in segment 1. But this is where we talk about what his passion and his profession. Episode 13, 113. I don't know why I keep saying 13. Segment 2 today is brought to you by farmhousedelivery.com. It's basically an Austin-based company that sources Texas ranches and farms for organic produce and meats. And if you go to their website, it's well worth it. Dustin, I have to admit, I'm hooked on spaghetti squash. Never did like it.
Oh yeah, it's legit. Yeah.
You're a fan
too. Absolutely, yeah.
I had it in one of their produce kits, and I tried to get creative with it. And I actually impressed myself for the first time in the kitchen. You know, it was quite bizarre. Good bottle of wine.
Yeah. We get to do ours with shrimp. We like doing it that way. Yeah, it's good.
You're churning some ideas that that sounds really good. What kind do you drink? You guys have a white wine with it, or pair it with the shrimp, or
it's usually a red. Yeah.
Red.
Yeah, but I'm not much of a wino, but that's always a good thing to have with it. If you put it in front of me, I won't turn it down.
Yeah, hey, don't tempt you with a good time with a wine or the craft brews. Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
So, farmhousedelivery.com, when you order your meal kits or produce or the organic meats, when you check out, the promo code MANCAVE will get you 20% off of your first order. One thing that I think our home base here in Austin, Texas, college baseball, honestly, in this part of the country and the SEC, it is life. It's right there below football as far as interest level. When you see all these programs, and I want to, for people who are not too familiar with the programs here in Texas, if you could comment on what you are not predicting, but the overall health of college baseball in the state of Texas. You got Schlossnagle from TCU to A&M, which I thought was interesting. TCU still is quite a program on the national level. U of H. Jose Cruz Jr., the coach at Rice now. Texas Tech, Sam Houston, Dallas Baptist, Baylor, Texas. And if you want to go farther up, I mean, Skip Johnson, OU, and Holiday at Oklahoma State. But if we just reel it into the great state of Texas, is there any other state, maybe California and Florida, who right now, if you were to gauge the overall health of college baseball statewide, is there a better state?
No, I don't think so. It's all those programs you mentioned many of them have legitimate, Omaha aspirations. Yeah. And you can't say that about a lot of other programs. Can't say that about a lot of other states. It's when Texas would go out to California and play at Stanford and UCLA and places like that, they'd show up with more fans than those respective programs would have at their own home stadium. So it's a big deal. It's something I noticed at Orange Bloods during my years there is that there might be in grand total more Texas basketball fans, but the passion of the Texas baseball fan base, you're right, it's just below football. I mean, it's a very passionate, educated group, and fairly so. I mean, it's the most storied college baseball program there is. But no, the health of college baseball in the state of Texas is outstanding. Texas obviously being preseason number one at Baseball America and D1 baseball. A&M with the Schlossnagle era getting going. They've been outstanding on the recruiting trail. They got Nate Yeske, who was a big-time pitching coach, to come over and join that program. Nolan Kanan's recruiting coordinator from LSU. Kirk Sarlos has kind of been waiting for that opportunity at TCU to kind of take over that program once Jim Schlossnagle moved on, because Jim had flirted with some jobs before Mississippi State and things like that. So it's kind of a matter of time. We know U of H has had some strong seasons in the past. I like what I've seen from Rice so far. I was a little skeptical about that hire initially, because whenever you see a guy go from the pro level to the college level, it's tough to understand how recruiting works and things like that. But I've been impressed with Jose Cruz Jr. so far and the hires he's made. They're doing a really good job on the development side, which is where I think that they were lacking under the previous regime. So I think Rice is on the way up. Dallas Baptist is really knocking on that Omaha door. They almost made it last season. I think it's just a matter of time before they get there. They've really been recruiting at a high level. I kind of compare them to kind of the Dallas version of what Rice became under Wayne Graham and when David Pierce was there. That private school that starts recruiting at that level of the high D1, and they develop guys, they put guys into the big leagues, and all of a sudden they're competing to make the College World Series on a pretty consistent basis. And Baylor's doing a heck of a job. They're really well run. Tim Tadlock at Texas Tech, an Omaha threat, and a threat to win the Big 12 title every single season. And you even go down the list some. I've been really impressed with a program like ACU has been doing on the recruiting side of things. Having a few months at 5-tool under my belt now, you go out to the summer and you see a lot of these players, and you kind of look at some of their commitments, and you're nodding your head like, hey, this is a really good player. I mean, this is a guy that could be at that other, D1 level. And, Sam Houston State, what they've been doing, Colton Cowser was just a top 5 pick in the Major League Baseball draft. So I could go on, man. The health of baseball. And, oh, by the way, the junior college national champions are in Texas, McLennan. And we know how
I forgot about them.
We know how good San Jacinto is as well.
Yeah.
Like, the junior college baseball in Texas is really, really good. I mean, don't turn your nose up at junior college if you're a player, because those guys can play. And if they don't get drafted, they often go play big D1 baseball somewhere.
I'm glad you said that, because my junior college experience, as far as knowledge, is the Region 14 with Panola, Angelina. There's a whole list. I'm drawing a blank.
I think Navarro's out there too.
Yes. But it's every region of Texas, and even the South, where Alvin, I think, Community College, to Galveston, and then there's so many. And I'm glad you mentioned Abilene Christian back on the Division I level. Right now, Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston, they're out in the WAC now, which is, I don't know. There were some years the Southland was pretty good at baseball.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think this WAC may give them an opportunity to possibly have an at-large bid out of that conference. I don't know because I haven't seen a full season. I know New Mexico State is the premier name in basketball. I don't know about if they're not New Mexico. Let's just say that in baseball. When you look at you have an opportunity with 5-tool to expose yourself to some of the best up-and-coming talents in the state of Texas, or you're aware of them. If you were to list, and I know we don't have time to go through a long list, but for you, who are the names that you're watching, or who are you really watching? Keep an eye on that. You think that it may be not receiving the attention that they deserve, who could surprise a lot of people, baseball prospects?
Yeah, that's a good question. We put together our 5-tool 55 rankings list for players for the 22 class and the 2023 class as well. So obviously a lot of those guys are kind of established. When you get to the senior age group, many of those guys are already committed to major D1 programs. Part of the reason we talked about early on, like recruiting is so early now, that those guys are often, they're often recruited at a really, really early age. So it's, a couple guys that I would have mentioned actually just made commitments recently. Let's go local with Lake Travis, and Cole Johnson was the guy that we had at our 5-tool academic showcase kind of event. And it's one of the things I was really excited to be a part of. Well, I wasn't necessarily a part of it, but that 5-tool put together was, it's like the Twitter account handles 5-tool GPA. So you had to have a certain academic standing to qualify to play for this team, GPA, test scores, whatever it is, because we wanted to create an opportunity for those academic institutions to know that, hey, when you watch this team play, you know that you can recruit all of these guys. Because if you're at let's say a Trinity, for example, and you go out and watch a game and you're like, man, I like this player, he's not committed, I think this guy would be a potential good fit for our program. What do you got to do as a coach? You got to go call around and figure out what his academic standing is. Does he have the grades? Does he have the test scores? Could he even get into my university before I can actually recruit these guys? So we created that sort of event and team as a showcase to say, hey, here are all the guys that you don't have to worry about them qualifying academically. We've done the homework. They check off the boxes there. Recruit these guys. And, Cole Johnson from Lake Travis was a guy that was kind of under the radar a little bit, but he ended up just committing to Oklahoma State. So a big get for them for the 2023 class. And, he was the guy that had a big time production as a sophomore at Lake Travis. And we know how good that program is. And if you're producing there and playing there as a sophomore, you've got to be a really, really good player as well. And they've got another infielder I really like there, Hank Benny. I think he's got a chance to be a really good hitter as well. And going over to Westlake, not an under the radar guy, but I think that the average fan probably hasn't turned their attention to the 2024 class. They've got a shortstop named Theo Gillen, who I think has a chance to be the number one player in Texas for his age group in 2024. So if you're looking for one of those guys that's kind of an up-and-coming guy that's a sophomore right now, go to Westlake, watch Theo Gillen, man. He's got a chance to be a really, really big-time baseball player.
Shameless plug or shameless question for the son of a friend of mine. The small at Anderson High School is, I don't know if you followed him yet. He is, I think, supposed to be, he was a freshman this year, freshman football. And anyway, he's supposed to be top 5 in his class in the entire state for baseball.
25?
Yeah, 24 or 25. I can't remember.
Probably 25. Yeah. They've got a pitcher too that just committed to Dallas Baptist over the fall. Man, his name escapes me right now. I think it might be Jake Melvin, but he's going to be big time. One of the things that we always try to tell parents and players and stuff like that is like, it's amazing how much kids will change physically from their junior year to their senior year. See it all the time. We're seeing it with this senior class. Bernie has a kid and not under the radar, but Cole Phillips, he's signed with Arkansas, but he doesn't even look like the same guy just because of that last offseason they have to get in the weight room and kind of change their bodies. And you start filling out a lot more and things like that. And we always tell kids, hey, like you're going to go from your sophomore or junior year to your senior year, and you're just going to change so much physically. And he's a kid at Anderson, I think, has got a chance to be really big time player. But I've been super encouraged by Central Texas and even the San Antonio area. The talent level is really increasing on a yearly basis for baseball.
No, that's really encouraging to hear, because I think if there has been one constant throughout this growth, or even before the boom of the ATX area, it's been a really good baseball region as far as talent. I was going to ask you, I don't know how much time you have. Just a quick thought on the Astros and Rangers. As for Chris Woodward and the Rangers, how many years away do you think they are before truly contending for something?
They're close. I mean, obviously, when you spend the money that they spent this offseason with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, you're kind of competing now. I think one of the really underrated moves they made, and the name escapes me, but they got one of the San Francisco Giants hitting coaches who kind of revolutionized what the Giants did from the hitting side and their game planning and their batting practice and all this sort of stuff. And I believe he's basically their offensive coordinator for the Rangers. And sometimes those types of moves fly really under the radar, and fans just don't realize it. Like, just look at what the Giants have done the last couple of years with their hitting and stuff like that. It's, Gabe Kapler, and I think was totally in over his head with the Phillies. Kind of got another opportunity with San Francisco. It's a great. I mean, they kind of changed the game in terms of how many coaches they hire and things like that. So I think the Rangers have a chance to be a better offense. Obviously, when you add the talent of Seager and Semien, but they're probably still at least another year away. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, they're not as good as the Astros, whether Correa comes back or not. I think Seattle is a little bit ahead of them, and Seattle going out and get Robbie Ray in the season that they had last year. The Angels with a healthy Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, they made some moves in the offseason. So the Rangers are still a year away, I think. But they've certainly raised the floor of what they're going to be competitively this upcoming season. So I just like it when teams spend money, because these owners are rich and they have the money to spend. And fans deserve that sort of investment, that sort of product, especially when you're going to charge them as much as they did. And, oh, by the way, you're funding, a new stadium basically through taxpayer money for the most part. So it was encouraging to see them go spend some money. And I don't think they're done. I think they'll go spend some once the CBA gets signed and the lockout ends as well. I think they'll go try to add an arm or something like that, because that offense is a little top heavy right now. If they could just add another guy to that mix, I think they got a chance to be a solid offensive team this year. And then you'll see what happens with the pitching.
Hey, if we can commit to a couple of days, man, I would love to go see a Rangers. I've been to the stadium. I just have not seen a game yet.
I haven't seen one either yet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting up there for sure. It's definitely one of the ones I want to check off my list. But the Astros, underrated park. Minute Maid's underrated, I think.
Oh, it is.
It's a very awesome, loud atmosphere. I mean, when they're really good, but I'd be surprised if they don't win the West again this year. Verlander coming off of Tommy John, and it's just such a well-run organization from a developmental standpoint. And I'm really looking forward to Alex Bregman having a healthy year. People don't realize, when guys play through injuries, sometimes he was telling us that his range of motion with his wrist was basically like this.
Oh my God.
And I mean, now it's back to this again after his surgery or whatever. So you don't realize sometimes what guys are playing through and how that can impact performance. So I think he's going to have a big year this year, but Houston, until proven otherwise, I think is going to be that team to beat in the AL West.
I agree. And for Rangers fans who are looking for something positive, this may be it right here.
Hey, man, tell me something good.
Tell me something good. That is the voice of Mike Harge's youngest son, by the way, just to let y'all know. Tell me something good, brought to you by Kevin Hutchinson of Realty Austin. Dustin McComas has a wealth of positivity. Tell me something good going on in your world, or something that maybe you've observed that you think delivers a ton of positivity and optimism in this world.
Man, we could use it anywhere you can find it. We could certainly use it for sure. But, I think that I've kind of noticed, I like many people in the sports industry spend a lot of time on Twitter, for better or for worse. But I have been noticing lately, it does seem like people are starting to do a better job of telling people they're doing a good job. Like, if you enjoyed a podcast, telling people that you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed a story, telling them you enjoyed it. Like,
love it.
It's one of the things that I think people don't realize is that sometimes, when you cover sports and you interact so much with fans and things like that on social media, message boards, whatever it is, it's oftentimes a negative feedback industry because fans are fanatics. Mm-hmm. They get upset when their teams don't do well or a player doesn't do well or whatever it is. And they want to take out their frustration on somebody. So sometimes that becomes the writer, the podcaster, or whoever it is. So I've been noticing lately just a lot more examples of people kind of telling each other, hey, you're doing a good job, or just kind of supporting people that way, because I think that's something that can go a long way. I don't think people realize that it's simple, nice way of saying, hey man, I enjoyed what you did there, or that story, or that podcast, or whatever it is. Can go a long way to helping people. And I've seen some people that are like really successful in the sports industry saying, hey, like, you guys don't appreciate how much it means sometimes to just hear people say, hey, you're doing a good job. So the more of that, the better, for sure. We could certainly use more of it as we hopefully crawl out of this pandemic and get back to living a normal life.
That was well stated. And I'm really glad that you said that, because there's so many keyboard warriors, for a lack of better terms, on social media that like to bring people down because they're miserable. That's what I think. And then, of course, when Texas is not doing well at football, we see a lot of that vitriol, so to speak.
That's one way to put it. The meltdowns. Yeah,
the meltdowns.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of those over the last decade. So let's hope that they kind of I'm hoping that I was just kind of a jinx. Like, hey, I'm not covering Texas anymore. You guys can start winning some games again, for sure. So we'll see.
Hey, Dustin, before we take the exit, great job by you and Drew. And I'm not just
appreciate it.
You guys are really doing a good job and providing a good service to parents who have recruitable kids or who want to play on the college level. And I've always respected your work as well, no doubt.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And, you're such a positive guy and you have that infectious energy that, I know people enjoy coming on here and sharing their stories and things like that. And I know I certainly enjoyed it.
All right, man, this has been a great day. And I owe you a fine beverage because I went about 20 minutes. We went about 20 minutes over what I said we would.
That's okay. I'm surprised you didn't hear the little man yelling in the background, but during lunchtime. So we're good. We got through that one.
Well, either way, I owe you a craft cocktail, if you will. Anytime, it's redeemable at any moment, any day.
I like it. It. No promo code needed.
None. And nobody needs to know where we are. So, Dustin, and then for even Drew Bishop, man, if you're watching, man, you keep up the good work and you guys continue doing what you're doing. And for the Dustin McComas and all of the OG Man Cave boys, that being Big Mike, Coach Mo, and Hardball Harge, we are out.
You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up.